The Miata has a new engine and it is way over the top. Also, we got a bunch of other shop updates coming. It's so hot in Florida.
That's disgusting.
It's gross. At least I'm keeping the humidity down here, in here with some fans blowing. But this car got out of hand. It's the first snowball car I've had in a long time. Like, the effect of this thing has been pretty heavy. It's mainly because it was my grandma's car and I will own it forever, so why not do it right the first time? Or second or third time by now? I'm not really sure. This is only the second engine that's ever been in here, so first engine that lasted a really long time. But Carlos built this motor and we went nuts with it. It's full piston rod, cut crank, head studs. The head is completely redone because I bought the motor and ended up having a bad valve job. So that's all done. Springs, it's all of it pretty much. I wanted to make some more power up top, so we did the Skunk 2 manifold. That's on there now. And we're still retaining all the AC stuff. I kept the same Track Dog intercooler on there. I think it'll be fine for what we're doing. It's also a balance of blocking the radiator and the AC versus intake air temps, because you want to keep the intake air temps down. That's what the intercooler does, but I want AC and I also don't want it to overheat. So keeping the intercooler sized accordingly is going to be key. So if I don't need to go bigger with that or more efficient with that, I'm going to try not to. But obviously we'll see, especially when it's 97 degrees outside. This turbo setup is completely different than the last car. Some of you guys who know about Mitsubishis and stuff would know that this is basically just an Evo 10 turbo. It's a great turbo for this motor. It's balanced really well for it. It spools and is super responsive. They are very low cost, but it's kind of one of those things where it just matches the motor really well magically. There's even cars like back in the day when you'd buy like a 90s Japanese car and they'd put like a Greddy turbo on it and it would be like super responsive and really good. And like nowadays turbo technology has come so far, but that old Greddy turbo is still as good as the newest stuff because it just matches it perfectly. And this is kind of one of those setups. And then we got a twin scroll manifold. Now it should be even more responsive at part throttle and low end spool. All these really fancy fasteners on here so that stuff doesn't come loose, and that's been a problem with this car. Like, been having issues with the turbo bolts coming loose, downpipe bolts coming loose, all that stuff. Upgraded wastegate, hopefully for some more response. We had just a Garrett wastegate on there before and it was kind of lazy, so hopefully with this whole setup that will fix that. 3-inch downpipe with a big divorce tube on it and lots of clearance. That was another problem with the previous turbo kit. The downpipe was super close to the steering shaft and the frame and transmission all together as one. So with not having solid motor mounts, it was really tough to get it to not hit something. So under hard braking, sometimes I'd feel the downpipe touch the steering shaft, and then under full throttle, sometimes you could hear it buzz the transmission. So this new downpipe setup has tons of clearance and makes it actually clear really well. Kept power steering. When we redid the motor, we blocked off the front half of the motor, so this is where the water outlet normally is, and now it's on the back. It routes around underneath the intake manifold. And the reason we did that is because these motors were originally front-wheel drive engines. The water would flow out the back normally, and they changed it to flow out the front in this, so it killed the cooling capacity for the back 2 cylinders, so it would get hot that way. So now we've inverted it, put it out the back and coming out this side, and blocked off the front timing cover and all that. I also put some little heat management deal with some wrap and around all the oil lines and everything. But outside of that, new clutch, put a competition clutch in it and flywheel setup, and I've just cruised it around right here, moving it. It feels really good. Nice, it's not too heavy, and hopefully it'll hold the build all this for 300 horsepower mentality. So a little bit more power, nothing crazy, but the last time I was up at the Dragon with this car, the stock diff, it works really, really well, but at a lot of power, I felt like it wasn't applying it really well. So I picked up off Marketplace 1.5 way Cusco 1.8 diff, and it has the proper 3:6 ratio. This has a 3.6 as well, but this is basically going to make it so it locks up. It's a clutch type diff. It's going to be much more aggressive and much more manageable with the power, and hopefully not be brutal on the street. We'll see. If it sucks and it's really rattly on the street, maybe I'll put that other diff back in. We also have to build out an exhaust out of all this stuff we have here. I've got a bunch of MBRP tubing and piping we're going to end up getting done and put in there to build out the exhaust. And oh, hey, Pop.
Thanks, Bob.
And that's just the stuff that came with this turbo setup. So I'm basically going to remake that out of some new MVRP stuff and hang a muffler in the back as well. I don't think there's anything else really new outside of maybe I put this nice center console in that has a cup holder built into it.
Oh, that looks great.
Yeah, I don't know, little things to make it nicer to drive. Let's move on to the next. Car's dead as always.
Wah wah.
Oh, that's why. You don't have an Optima battery in there. Shameless plug. That rolled off the tongue so nicely, man. Dude, this thing is so powerful, it's ridiculous. It's so powerful. I just need one of these to start all of my cars all the time. Don't stall!
Every time, dude.
She does it every time! There you go. Another update. Your car is ready to go outside of your problems. Your fenders that you want to paint and fix.
Yeah.
It's ready to go besides that.
Yep.
It was missing the handbrake, shifter, and I think the radiator hoses. So we finally put those on. Oh, and the coolant tank. Because you watched it last time and it exploded on us. So those are good. We put the handbrake in and we use the fitting kit that I prefer to use. Chase Base has some junk where it interferes like 800 connections and T's and stuff, when all you need to do is come out of the rear master and then go back into the hard line that the master goes to, and you're done, the handbrake, instead of teeing into a bunch of things and having a bunch more possible failures that are right near the steering rack and a bunch of other stuff. And then inside, you have to still put the console back together, but we did an ASD handbrake, just a standard pullback, flipped the master upside down.
So it didn't hit my elbows.
So it didn't hurt elbows. And you can do that on inline ones because it'll bleed straight through it anyway, because it's connecting the rear calipers straight to the brake master, and it just bleeds right through it. We got IRP shifter, which you're pretty pumped about.
He got it for me for Christmas. So he also set up the lockout for fifth so I can shift into fourth easily and third without missing anything and messing up, because I do that often and I will always stall a car. The shifter's big for the BMW so that it doesn't feel like a bowl of mashed potatoes. I'll just put it back together and then I think we might take it out on Tuesday.
Is that the plan? You're gonna take the fenders off?
Maybe.
I don't think it's gonna be there Tuesday, but.
Probably not.
This is just to motivate her. I'm not like Debbie Downing her. She'll be like, I'll show him, and then she'll actually
No,
do it.
I just said probably not.
But other than that, it's ready to go. Cage, the diff is done.
I need
We
harnesses.
tested it. Oh yeah, I have
need
those over
harnesses.
there. I have a set of those.
Okay.
We tested the handbrake. It works really good, even with the pads that were in the car already. And we do have good pads to put in there too, but it locked up really good. The shifter feels good. It fixes the BMW detent sloppiness and makes it so that it's easy to shift. And it,
I hit the bowl of mashed potatoes.
yeah, it's like a bowl of mashed potatoes. But now it's like you can slam it into third as hard as you want. It won't go into fifth unless you press the button in on top.
I said fourth, I meant third.
Yeah, I mean either way, fourth too. Yeah, and then reverse too. It won't go in reverse unless you push the button in.
Yeah.
Not like we ever slam it back into first ever.
No.
But not at least in a M3. Maybe a 325 or something you might need to go down to first. But with a 3.9 in second gear, it's really short anyway. You want to drive this thing or what?
Maybe.
We could probably just put small front wheels and tires on it and take you out there and drive it. That way you don't have to take the fenders off. She wants to save her fenders
In case I ever want to not have over fenders.
because they're Techno and they match everything and they're the original Techno ones. So she
Yeah.
was gonna put the over fenders on other fenders and paint them.
Yeah.
But that's like extending the timeline of instead of going and driving.
It's only been 3 years I've owned this car anyway, so what's another couple
But
months?
it's ready! Are you not excited about that?
Oh yeah.
It's literally ready. Harnesses and front fender removal. Done. Go to the
Done.
track.
Go to the
Shred.
track.
And then find the next slew of problems.
Yep. Can't wait.
My stock handbrake, dude. Okay, so basically, I've been dealing with no handbrake in this car, and it sucks to drive at like technical tracks. It's fine if you're just gonna fly around and drift by yourself, but you need a handbrake for tandem. Also, this car is like really nice, and I don't want to crash it just because I don't have a handbrake to manipulate something somewhere. So I ended up getting a GK Tech S13 handbrake adapter, and what it does is it takes the cable handbrake and pulls on a lever that then pushes the master in. So it's a hydraulic handbrake that's used mechanically with a factory handbrake. I thought I could get it to work with a Corolla handbrake, but I couldn't. So I actually mounted a full S13 handbrake inside of the factory setup so that the cable would pull it the right direction and it would work. So basically it's just got a drift knob on the front, lift up on it now, and it locks the handbrake by rotating the master in the back. Doing the lines is a little bit of a pain on this car because of the length it needs to be, because the master is so far back in this car and the routing through the dash. So I had to make up some lines and figure some things out with that, but it works. I don't know how well yet. I haven't gone to the track, but it works, and it looks pretty OE. A couple little updates on this. I went ahead and did full coil unplug. That actually is functioning and working right now. I still need to delete the igniter and stuff. I still have that. NST pulleys, now they are completed on and working because the alternator was wrong. It was basically undercharging everything no matter what I did. So we went ahead and took the alternator to this race shop nearby, and they rebuilt it so it just runs 14.0 voltage all the time. So at idle with everything on, it's like 13.9, and at red line it's 14.1. And before it was going to like 18.0 at the very top, overcharging everything and putting the ECU into a fault state. So that's all fixed now. It runs great, revs to 8,400 without any problems. I had to get a new filter, waiting on K&N to finish up a nice one, but the other one was so exploded that I stuck this on there for right now. And also I went with 100 mil stacks instead of 70 mil that were on there before. And it actually like physically woke the car up in the mid-range, like from 2,500 all the way to like 7,000, and it made no loss of power up top. So it actually was really nice upgrade for the longer stacks at least. For a long time people always ran 50 to 70 mil stack. It seems like lately people have been trying the 100, so I figured for $100 to try them and see if it picks up some more mid-range, it'll make it way nicer to drift. So one of the things I found with this car was with these wheels that came with it, which are just like Rota TE reps, but they're like 9 inches wide. At really high amounts of angle, it was rubbing on the frame a little bit. So I went with smaller tires, and then that got rid of the rubbing completely. But looking at it from underneath, I was like, man, it would benefit from having a little bit more camber and a little more clearance. So I lengthened the lower arm and put some more caster in it. Now it has a bit more self-steer, which helps with how snappy this car is, and it also makes it more fun to drive because you can really yak it around. And they don't have a ton of power, so they never blow through the tire. So having a front end that's really snappy can make the driving a bit more enjoyable. But yeah, so we've gone down to 195 45 15s in the front and got a wider stance in the front, which will also add a little bit more grip when we get really high angle because it'll lean the car over a little bit more. But next up is rear springs to lower the back another probably ½ inch or so, and then upper control arms because they're hitting the body. But it's good enough at this point. It's really fun, and I'm excited to maybe try to drive it with a handbrake and everything working so we can really shred it and make all of its use. This is one of the most exciting things for me because I've owned this car for 4 years and it's had a pretty difficult past with like little accidents during moving, and like it's just never been a car I could drive because of all these little things adding up. And finally last week I was like, we're putting the car together. So my buddy painted this car, Wise Concepts, about 2 years ago, and it's just been sitting with it sanded, ceramic coated and everything. It's been sitting for like the last 2 years. And I did drive this car a little bit like 4 years ago, but overall like I spent some time putting all the moldings back on, which now they're dirty because I've been driving it, but which is nice because that's what I wanted to do. So I ceramic coated all the moldings. I got new corner lights everywhere. I got new trim pieces where they needed to be. The door handles and seals are all new. Window sills are new, or seals. I went over and nut bolt checked it, changed the oil, and did all the normal things you do. Drained the fuel, which is actually kind of a pain because these don't have any drains on them because they're plastic. So you actually have to run the pump and drain it that way. Fuel was so old I didn't want to run it through it and chance it. So I put some VP in there and ran it through, cleaned it out, and then just put some pump gas in it after that. What's cool about this car is it's a Techno Violet car, which they didn't make a lot of, and only made very few with a Medina interior, which is like the full peanut butter and jelly combo. So it's a pretty rare interior. It's a luxe package, really dirty, covered in body shop stuff still, but I'm getting to the interior next. I gotta buy some little trims and clips to complete this and clean it all up, but all of the basis of it is all there. The Medina carpet, seats, and they're the proper seats instead of the Vaders. I'm not a huge Vader fan. I know they look cool, but they're really uncomfortable to drive and they don't really hold you in any better than these. So these standard Lux seats are pretty comfy. And it's basically stock. The car has two-way adjustable VCs, so ER series, and they're valved to be really soft on the compression end of things, and then a lot of rebound control so that the ride quality is really good. And the springs are fairly soft. It's a 7.5K in the front and a 13K in the rear, which I find is really good balance for like a street car. As long as you have good sway bars, it's a good balance. And then I have these Bridgestone BIM ZEET wheels. So the BIM is Bridgestone International Motorsports. They're actually printed on the wheel here, BIM Creative Studio, and the model is a Z. These are wheels I got from Japan. I've always liked the way they look because they're Japanese, but they're very kind of Euro styling. I always imagined these similar to the wheels that like 190E Cosworths came with. So I found a set that were the right fitment for running adapters. So I have 5x114 adapters, and then I put 245 Invos square because it's kind of like a nicer, more luxury tire from Nitto. It looks cool. Still has a lot of grip for this chassis. So it's a lot of fun, and it doesn't have so much grip that you can't slide it around a little bit and enjoy it. Good track alignment, so it's got 3 degrees front camber, 2.5 rear, big front bar, and other than that, the engine's completely stock. It just has an RK Tunes ECU, and it's been about really just kind of making it look like a nice, streetable E36. These cars went downhill for such a long time. It's nice to have a really, really nice one. So the Fox body has gotten, this is like the ever upgrading car. It takes most of my time because we're just like evolving it and making it better and better. Last time you guys probably saw the video, I was doing the true coilovers and we didn't quite get done them because we need some parts. Those are done. I'll lift it up in a second and show you that. But I have this RTR dash that's from our S550 FD car that we're gonna put in there. Probably not today, but when I have some time. And the main reason is this dash is it's pretty ugly because it's an SN95 dash in this car and all of it's missing. I think when it's in the proper car, it's fine, but it doesn't really fit this car well. It's funny because it looks like a left-hand drive and right-hand drive dash because it's so cut up and damaged. We're gonna put this in there, which should free up some more weight. And then I finally am gonna put these fiberglass doors on, hopefully, in the next couple weeks, because the goal is to get the car down to its lightest weight it's been so far. Right now, it's 2,600 with Chelsea and I in the car and full tank of fuel. I set up the car and corner balanced it because typically I do have a rider with me, and most of the time that weight is there, so having it set up that way is pretty solid. But being 2,600 with both of us in it means the car is well into like 2,300 territory empty. And that's with 12 gallons of fuel. So this will be a couple more pounds off of it and make it look nicer and kind of give it that cool feel of like having the FD car in there, because it's like got the livery on it and partners and everything still, so it's really cool. The doors are worth 135 pounds as a pair together versus putting these in there, because these are power and full electric everything, because I leave the car outside a lot. So putting those fiberglass doors on there is going to lose 135 pounds. So we could be well into the 2,200 pounds without a driver weight, and that's going to be really successful and help with the tire wear and making the tire do the work a lot better. So, and it'll be fun to drive. I'll rack it up and show you guys the true coilover. Okay, so we did finalize the true coilover. It was on the car for the last E-Town 235 class, and this is basically what we ended up with. We got a bolt-on bracket that goes in the stock location and gives you more height adjustment. It's lowered the shock down, which then allowed us to basically have lots of ride height adjustment in the shock itself. And for the top hat, I took a upper monoball mount from a shock and I bolted that to the car so that the monoball shock mount stays bolted in at all times. And when you want to remove the coilover, you just pull the top bolt out and slide it out. So the whole coilover is removed by 2 bolts, a nut and bolt here and a nut up top, and that removes that. I've just got the reservoirs tied back to here. And even more note is the ones that we ran at E-Town were different valving. I felt like they were too stiff. Shim stack was too stiff. So we then built another set of shock cartridges themselves that are softer and have more bleed in the shocks. That way we can get more instant dig. So I felt like with the anti-squat we were running there for the 235 and all that, the suspension dampening was just a little on the stiff side. So that's in, adjusted, and now we have lots of ride height adjustment. So it was really cool to kind of switch over to that and be able to swap over this anti-squat adjustment on the fly without changing any ride height or anything. So that's a really cool tool to be able to use for the solid axle. And it's raining in Florida. What else is new? But yeah, so while we were at the track, Chelsea went off and folded one of these lower control arms, and it was because I have it set to be the absolute max. Like there's only a 1/2 inch of clearance between here and the tire when it's at full lock with the way I have all this adjusted. So basically what happened is we went to a larger, thicker 5/8 lower arm. So now this is not going to do that. And you can obviously see it is rubbing drifting and it's just taking my wheel down to nothing because it just doesn't care. So that's much stronger. A little concerning if we get a big wheel hit, we might mess this tubular subframe up that's meant for drag racing, not really for drifting. We'll get there and we'll see. But a lot of the other arm companies have super stiff, crazy arms anyway, and I think this is obviously just similar. But we're able to get a little more angle out of these arms as well. But outside of that, it's pretty much the same underneath. I'm just waiting on the new turbo to come, and we got a 410 rear axle. So this is a 373 diff. The gearing was a little long. We wanted something with a higher number ratio-wise. So I went on Marketplace and I was searching at night on the late night hype train, just Googling, looking on Marketplace, Craigslist, and I found this diff here, which is a 410. And what's super cool about it is it already has the spool, the 410 in it, and stronger 5-lug swapped axles. So it's already got all the stuff that I need. I believe they're 31 spline, which is the same as these, so the strength will be really good. And the best part about it is its Fox body width. So this has been an SN95 width, which is about 1.5 inches wider than the Fox body diff. So once we put this axle in, we're gonna get our better ratio and be able to fit the bigger wheels we've been trying to run the entire time. So I've been so tight rolling the fenders and trying to get everything to fit that we've been running 35 offset rear wheels and none of the cool FD lightweight wheels that we have. So we'll be able to run all of those with this diff. So I'm gonna open this up now and see what's actually inside, and we'll see. Oh, nice. So these are cool. These basically put tension on the caps, so that way it makes it so the bearings don't move, add some strength to it. So it is a 410, stamped right here on the inside, and it has a steel spool in it, so that's really, really nice. It also has these monoball upper mounts, but we're gonna have to change those out for our tree design that we have that moves them forward and in to shorten the links to get more triangulation. It also helps with the geometry a little bit. And then the other tricky thing we got is this bearing plate here. So this one has its own bearing plate to hold the brakes, and these are for some aftermarket brakes that I don't know what they are, and I've Googled and I can't find. Like, I thought they were aerospace engineering ones, so I could just buy calipers for them. But the easiest thing that what we're gonna end up doing is just popping the axles out, putting the bearing plate that we have on the car on there, swapping the upper mounts over, and then just slamming them right on the car. Upon inspection, I noticed on both sides of the axle that it's been cut and welded. Now I'm very concerned that I don't know what the width of this axle is. First I'm gonna measure this, because I don't even remember the axle length on the Fox body. Oh, we go backing plate to backing plate, that'll work. You got that? 53 3/4. So that means if it's correct, this one should be 55 1/4, 1.5 inch difference. Oh yeah, cool. That's weird. So they cut the tubes and did something with them. Maybe they ordered axles that were a little too short, and maybe it's just like 1/4 inch narrower or something. But a little bit narrower is fine, because we're gonna put some big wheels and spacers on it anyway. But I saw those weld marks, and I was like, I don't know what's going on there. But this was in a drag car. The guy who I bought it from told me it was in a drag car that ran 9s. So if the welds have held up for that, it should hold up for my 235 car.